The first contact between humans and the Zitherans was supposed to be a historic event. The Zitherans, a highly advanced alien race, had arrived in Earth's atmosphere after weeks of anticipation. The whole world was watching, waiting to see how this encounter would unfold. Humanity had spent years preparing for this moment. The atmosphere was charged with excitement, but also with a hint of fear. What if the aliens came with hostile intentions? Or worse, what if their visit led to war? Despite the tension, Earth's leaders were determined to make a good impression. Instead of showing hostility, they decided to extend an invitation to a formal dinner. A simple gesture of peace, they thought. They knew that showing their kindness and willingness to communicate would be the best way to ensure the future of intergalactic diplomacy. It wasn't just about a meal, it was about showing the Zitherans that humanity wasn't a threat, that Earth could be a place of peace. The Zitherans, however, were not so sure. The moment they received the invitation, their minds raced with suspicion. The Zitherans had traveled across the galaxy, encountering many species along the way. But they had also faced many dangers. Most of the species they encountered were aggressive, ruthless, and eager to dominate. The Zitherans had learned to always be on guard, trusting no one, and assuming the worst in every situation. To them, any offer of peace was likely to be a trap, an attempt to deceive and capture them. The first meeting was set in a grand, sleek space station orbiting Earth. It was designed to look peaceful and welcoming, filled with plants and soft lighting. The humans had prepared carefully, ensuring that everything from the food to the decorations reflected their peaceful intention. The Zitherans arrived with wariness in their eyes. They were tall, with pale blue skin and sharp features. Their large, almost glowing eyes scanned the room as they entered, taking in every detail with a sense of caution. Their leader, Zorath, a towering figure with an aura of authority, stood at the front, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. As the dinner began, humans tried to break the ice by offering their best dishes. The meal was beautifully arranged, platters of fresh fruits, delicate meats, and strange but pleasant-smelling dishes. However, to the Zitherans, every dish looked like a weapon, every move seemed like a trap. They did not understand the concept of food for peace. Their culture was built on survival and defense, and they had never encountered a species that did not view them as an enemy. Zorath, unable to hide his concern, leaned toward his second-in-command, Kinra, and whispered, "This is a trick. They want to see how we react. The food must be poison. They want to see us fall into their trap." Kinra's eyes flickered nervously. What if they are actually sincere? What if they are trying to show goodwill? But Zorath's fear was too strong. You saw their ships. They look weak, but they have weapons. I can feel it. They want to catch us off guard. As the dinner progressed, the humans noticed the growing unease in the Zitherans. They had been trying to engage them in casual conversation, discussing Earth's history, its cultures, and even offering them a chance to share their own stories. But the Zitherans remained silent, their eyes darting around the room. They carefully examined every piece of food and every word spoken, unsure of the humans' intentions. To the humans, it was clear that the Zitherans were nervous, but they didn't understand why. They thought that offering food and peaceful conversation would be enough to convey their intentions. They didn't know the Zitherans had encountered so many hostile species that they had learned to assume the worst. They didn't know that the Zitherans had faced betrayal more times than they could count. Finally, when the main course was served, the Zitherans could take it no longer. In a sudden, panicked move, Zorath stood up, knocking over his chair. His voice rang out in a sharp command. "We cannot stay here. It's a trap." The other Zitherans, looking terrified, quickly followed suit. They backed away from the table, their eyes wide with fear. The humans were left shocked and confused, unsure of what had just happened. The Zitherans rushed toward the exit of the station, their minds filled with dread. They had been tricked into thinking they were in danger, that this peaceful invitation was part of a larger scheme. They ran to their ships, quickly launching themselves back into space, leaving Earth behind in their wake. The humans were left in stunned silence. The leaders of Earth gathered in the conference room, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. It was clear that the Zitherans had misunderstood their peaceful intentions. They had fled in fear, not realizing that humans had only wanted to offer friendship. As the days passed, the humans worked tirelessly to communicate with the Zitherans, sending messages of peace, explaining that they had not intended to harm them. But the Zitherans were too afraid to listen. They had already decided that humans were too unpredictable, too dangerous. The incident became a defining moment in Earth's history. It was a reminder of how easily misunderstandings could escalate into fear and conflict. The humans, determined to prevent a war, continued to send peaceful messages to the Zitherans. But in the back of their minds, they all wondered, would the Zitherans ever return? Would they ever realize that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to be peaceful, even when others saw it as a weakness? In the end, the unexpected feast became a lesson for both sides, that sometimes peace isn't as easy to understand as it seems, and that trust, once broken, is not so easily rebuilt. The Tyrukans had arrived. Their massive ships darkened the skies above Earth, casting long, ominous shadows across the planet's cities. Humans had never seen anything like it. The Tyrukans were a powerful, mysterious alien race known for their strength and ruthless conquests. No one knew what to expect. Would they be the next species to fall under the Tyrukans' rule? Or was this the beginning of humanity's greatest battle? Earth's leaders had been preparing for war. They knew the Tyrukans had attacked and destroyed entire planets before. No one could predict what would happen, but the general consensus was clear: humanity needed to be ready for the worst. As military forces across the world scrambled to prepare for battle, something unexpected happened. Instead of sending threats or demands, the humans did something entirely different. They sent an invitation. A simple message went out to the Tyrukans, requesting a formal dinner. The leaders of Earth didn't see war as the only solution. They wanted peace, a chance to show the Tyrukans that humanity was not like the other species they had conquered. It was an unprecedented move, one filled with hope and, for some, fear. Would the Tyrukans see it as a trick? Or would they respect the humans' attempt at diplomacy? The Tyrukans received the message and reacted with disbelief. Zorok, the Tyrukan commander, read the invitation over and over, unsure of what to make of it. His species had never encountered a race that offered peace before. In their experience, any invitation from a weaker species was either a trap or a desperate plea for survival. Surely, this couldn't be genuine. The Tyrukans had come to Earth to conquer it. They weren't here to sit down for dinner. Yet, after much debate, Zorok made the decision. He would go to the dinner. But not without precautions. He ordered his soldiers to prepare for the worst just in case. When the Tyrukans arrived at the human gathering site, a large, grand building made to look welcoming and peaceful, they were met with an atmosphere unlike any they had ever encountered. The humans were calm, polite, and strangely, genuinely happy to see them. The room was filled with soft light, exotic decorations, and the smell of freshly prepared food. It was nothing like the tense, warlike encounters they had experienced in the past. The humans greeted them with warm smiles, offering them seats and plates of food. Zorok and his warriors remained standing, unsure whether to trust the situation. They exchanged wary glances but kept their weapons close, ready for anything. The humans, sensing the Tyrukans' discomfort, tried to ease their nervousness. "Please, make yourselves at home," one of the human leaders said, his voice calm and welcoming. "This is just a dinner. No tricks, no traps. We only wish to talk and get to know each other." The Tyrukans looked at each other in confusion. How could the humans be so calm? Were they truly this naive? Or was it some kind of elaborate trap? The longer they stayed, the more they felt something wasn't right. Every word the humans spoke seemed too friendly, too welcoming. The food that had been placed before them looked unlike anything they had ever seen, foods that glowed faintly, bubbling with mysterious colors and shapes. Zorok's suspicion grew. He had fought many wars and conquered many worlds. He had never encountered a species so eager to please. He couldn't shake the feeling that the humans were hiding something. "Are we supposed to eat this?" Zorok asked, his voice low and careful. The human leader nodded. "Yes, please. It's a gift, a gesture of peace." But Zorok didn't believe them. He studied the food more closely, his eyes narrowing. The strange colors and smells seemed too perfect, too unnatural. His mind raced. Could it be a poison? Or something worse? He had heard stories of mind control substances used by other species to manipulate their enemies. What if this food was laced with something to make them weak, to make them submit? His soldiers shared his fears. One by one, they started to look around, their anxiety growing. The room, which had seemed so peaceful at first, now felt like a trap. The Tarukans were experts at reading threats, and everything about this situation screamed danger. Zorak's heart raced. It's a trap. They want to control us, to take our minds and make us their slaves. Don't eat the food. We must leave now. Before anyone could protest, Zorak stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. His voice boomed through the room. Prepare to leave. This is a trick. The humans tried to calm them down, but it was too late. The Tyrukans, panicked and terrified, grabbed their weapons and rushed for the door. They couldn't trust the humans. They couldn't risk being caught in some strange, unknown trap. They had to escape before it was too late. As the Tyrukans fled, the humans stood there, stunned and speechless. The dinner had ended in disaster, not because of any trick or betrayal, but because of a simple misunderstanding. The humans had only wanted to show kindness and offer peace, but to the Tyrukans, the gesture was seen as a threat. As the Tyrukans sped away in their ships, they couldn't help but wonder, had they misjudged the humans? Had they underestimated Earth's true power? The Tyrukans had always relied on fear and strength to conquer other species, but perhaps the humans' greatest weapon was something far more powerful: their ability to be kind, to offer peace when it seemed impossible. Now, with Earth's future uncertain, the Tyrukans were left to question everything they thought they knew about this strange, unpredictable world. Could Earth truly be as dangerous as they feared? Or was it far more powerful than they could ever imagine? The answer, they realized too late, was that humanity's greatest strength was not in its weapons or its armies. It was in its ability to remain peaceful, even when others saw it as a threat. The Zolgarans were feared across the galaxy. Known for their ruthless conquests, they had obliterated entire civilizations, leaving nothing but rubble in their wake. No species dared to challenge them. Their ships were larger than anything Earth had ever seen, and their warriors were unmatched in strength and aggression. When the Zolgarans arrived in Earth's orbit, the world braced itself for the worst. Everyone expected war, as it always was when they encountered new species. But this time, something unexpected happened. Instead of sending a fleet of soldiers or preparing for an attack, the humans did something entirely different. They sent out an invitation. "Come, join us for dinner," the message read. The words were simple, but the message was clear. Earth was offering peace. The leaders of Earth were determined not to make the same mistakes of the past. They wanted to show the Zolgarans that humanity wasn't like the other species they had conquered. This time, there would be no violence, no war, just a meal. The Zolgarans were immediately suspicious. Zorak, the commander of their forces, read the invitation with confusion. He had never been invited to a peaceful gathering before. It seemed impossible, especially from a species as weak as humans. The Zolgarans were used to sending messages of fear, to demanding obedience. The idea that a species would invite them to share a meal felt wrong. It had to be a trap. "Do you think this is a trick?" Zorak asked his second-in-command, Vera. "I don't know, Commander. It could be a test of some kind. Perhaps they want to see how we react before they strike," Vera replied, her eyes narrowed with caution. Zorak considered this for a moment. He trusted his instincts. They had never failed him before. But he also knew that humans were unpredictable. If they were truly offering peace, it would be a mistake to ignore it. They had been the dominant force in the galaxy for so long, they had become blind to the possibility of genuine kindness. Reluctantly, he agreed. "We will go, we go. But we are prepared for anything," Zorak declared. When the Zolgarans arrived on Earth, they were met with a sight they didn't expect. Humans stood on the surface, welcoming them with smiles, offering them food and drinks. The atmosphere was serene and calm, not one of fear or hostility. It was nothing like the military strongholds the Zolgarans had seen on other planets. The humans looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. Their faces showed no signs of aggression. Instead, they seemed relaxed, as if they were welcoming friends into their home. Zorek's unease grew. This wasn't what he had prepared for. He couldn't understand it. The Zolgarans were trained to expect violence, not hospitality. They were led into a large, brightly lit hall, where a massive table was set with an array of food. The smells were unfamiliar but pleasant. Humans motioned for the Zolgarans to sit, offering them seats around the table. Zorek hesitated. His instincts screamed that this was a trap, that this was too good to be true. But they were here now. What could they do? "Please, help yourselves," a human leader said, gesturing toward the food. "We only want to know you, to understand your people better." Zorek's mind raced. Could this be true? Were the humans genuinely offering peace, or was this some elaborate ruse? He scanned the room, trying to find any signs of deception. The food looked safe, but was it? His soldiers stared nervously at the dishes, unsure of what to do. Zorek's hand hovered above his plate, his thoughts tangled in doubt. Every part of his body screamed for him to act, to remain cautious. But then, something strange happened. The humans, sitting calmly, began eating without fear. They weren't hiding anything. They weren't waiting for the Zolgarans to make the first move. They were simply eating and talking as if nothing was wrong. Suddenly, one of Zorek's officers stood up, his face pale. "Commander, look," he shouted. Zorek turned to see the human leader's drink begin to bubble and froth unnaturally. The liquid swirled violently in its glass, as if alive. Before anyone could react, the food began to glow in strange, unsettling patterns. The dishes on the table started to shift, their colors twisting and changing. Zorek's eyes widened with horror. What kind of trick was this? Was this some sort of mind control, or a weapon designed to take over their minds? Panic spread through the Zolgarans. One by one, they backed away from the table, their hands hovering over their weapons. They had been fooled. The humans must have known this would happen. They had planned everything, all along, to trap them. This is it. This is the attack. Zorek shouted, his voice trembling. "We must leave, now." Before the humans could explain, the Zolgarans fled the room, running toward their ships. Their minds were filled with confusion and fear, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The humans had done nothing more than sit calmly and offer peace. But to the Zolgarans, everything had felt like a trick. As they ascended back into the sky, leaving Earth behind them, Zorek looked out the window, his mind still racing. What had just occurred? Why had the humans acted so strangely? Little did the Zolgarans realize that the strange events they had witnessed were just normal human behavior. The food and drink had been part of Earth's culture, nothing more than simple dishes prepared to show kindness. The bubbling drink, the shifting colors, it was simply a product of human creativity. The humans had turned fear into strength, showing the Zolgarans what true peace could look like. They had used kindness and calmness to face a challenge that most would have seen as an immediate threat. But to the Zolgarans, it had felt like something else entirely. And so, the Zolgarans left Earth with more questions than answers. Had they misjudged humanity? Was Earth really as weak as they had thought? Or was there something about humans that made them stronger than any weapon or army they had ever faced? The Zolgarans could not answer that question. But one thing was clear. They would never look at Earth the same way again. The Kraylons had arrived. Their massive ships descended through the clouds, casting long shadows over Earth's cities. The people of Earth watched in horror as the alien vessels touched down, their metallic surfaces gleaming ominously in the sunlight. The Kraylons were known across the galaxy for their brutal conquests. They had destroyed planets, enslaved species, and left nothing but destruction in their wake. It was no secret that the Kraylons believed in one thing: domination. No one had ever dared to challenge them, and no one had ever offered them peace. The world's leaders were paralyzed with fear. The news spread quickly. Earth was under attack. Military forces were mobilized, weapons were prepared, and everyone braced for war. No one knew what to expect from the Kraylons, but one thing was certain: humanity would need to fight for survival. But in the midst of panic, a small group of humans decided to take a different path. A group of diplomats, leaders who believed in the power of peace, gathered in secret to discuss a radical idea. Instead of preparing for battle, they decided to invite the Krayons to dinner. It was a bold move, one that most of the world would never understand. But these leaders believed that Earth could show the Krayons something they had never seen before. Humanity's strength was not in weapons or war, but in peace. And if they could show the Krayons that, perhaps they could change the course of history. The Krayons, of course, were shocked when they received the invitation. They had never encountered a species that would offer them peace. To them, this invitation was unthinkable. They assumed it was a trap. Perhaps the humans were trying to lure them into a position of weakness. Or maybe the meal was poisoned, a trick to catch them off guard. Whatever the reason, they were not convinced that humanity's intentions were pure. Despite their doubts, the Krayons decided to accept the invitation. They had always been cautious, but they were also curious. After all, they had never seen a species behave so differently. So, the Krayons arrived at the designated meeting place, a large, elegant hall prepared specifically for the occasion. The humans waited, calm and composed, ready to show them a side of Earth they had never seen before. When the Krayons entered, they were immediately struck by how different the humans were. The room was filled with soft music, warm lighting, and the scent of freshly cooked food. The humans were dressed in fine clothes, but there was no sign of tension, no preparation for battle. They looked peaceful. The Krayons, on the other hand, stood on edge, their eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger. They had fought in countless wars, and their instincts told them to be wary. As they sat down at the table, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The humans, for all their calmness, seemed almost too calm. The meal began, and the humans offered the Krayons food. The dishes were strange to the alien visitors, filled with unfamiliar colors and scents. But the Krayons hesitated. They studied the food, analyzing every detail. Was this some kind of trick? Was there something hidden inside the food poison, perhaps? Or a mind-altering substance designed to weaken them? The Krayons looked at the humans, trying to read their body language. But the humans remained composed, smiling and speaking with calm voices. As the dinner continued, the Krayons' unease grew. Every gesture, every word from the humans seemed too perfect, too calculated. The Krayons became more and more nervous. Were they being manipulated? Were the humans trying to control their minds? They couldn't understand how the humans could be so relaxed in the face of what seemed like certain death. The leader of the Krayons, Commander Thrax, felt his stomach churn. He had fought in wars across the galaxy, leading his people to victory after victory. But this was different. There was something unsettling about the way the humans acted. They didn't fight, they didn't scream, and they didn't even seem afraid. They just sat there, calm and collected, as if nothing was wrong. Thrax's mind raced. This is a trick. It has to be, he muttered under his breath. They're waiting for us to lower our guard, and then they'll strike. But despite his growing fear, Thrax couldn't bring himself to leave. The Krayons were known for their quick decisions in the heat of battle, but this was something different. This wasn't war. It was something else. The tension in the room grew as the meal continued. The Krayons tried to eat, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Their hands trembled slightly as they picked up their utensils, eyes darting around the room. Every movement felt like a potential threat. And then, it happened. Thrax stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. "We must leave," he said, his voice laced with fear. "This is a trick. We've been deceived." Before the humans could respond, the Krayons bolted for the door. They ran back to their ships, their hearts pounding in their chests. They didn't know what had just happened, but they knew they couldn't stay any longer. They had to get away before it was too late. As their ships soared into the sky, the Krayons couldn't help but feel a sense of defeat. They had come to Earth expecting a battle, expecting the humans to fight with all their strength. But instead, they had been met with calmness, with an unwavering sense of peace. And that, they realized, was the humans' greatest weapon. Their ability to stay calm in the face of danger, to offer peace instead of violence. had shaken them to their core. The Kralons were left with only one question: had they misjudged humanity? Had they underestimated the power of peace? The answer, they realized, was yes. And for the first time in their existence, they wondered if they had something to learn from the humans. Perhaps, in the end, it wasn't strength that conquered worlds. It was the strength to stay calm and composed in the face of fear. Humanity's greatest power was not in its weapons or its armies. It was in its ability to remain peaceful when all others chose war. And the Kralons would never forget the lesson they had learned that night.